بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. We find that through certain time spans and ages, we find that certain names or certain titles, they become dominant, or people begin to come around these titles and begin to champion these titles. We find that, as the ulama mentioned, that names and titles don't mean much. It's the actual principles that a person should be holding fast to. So we find through the Islamic heritage, we find such titles of Al-Iman, As-Sunnah, Al-Aqaid, Al-Aqidah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So various time spans, you find that various different ulama will make certain titles of certain principles, and they'll be known by that. For example, you have books called Kitab al-Tawheed, books of Kitab al-Sunnah, not speaking about the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but speaking about the Sunnah of the belief, of the believer. Likewise, Kutub of Al-Aqa'id that we find, or Al-Aqidah, Al-Wasatiyya, Tadmuriyya, Al-Hamawiyya that we find. So these are all various titles that become dominant in a certain time span or a certain era, and people begin to revolve around sometimes these titles, unfortunately. But what really concerns us is not the titles, it's the principles. Just like today that we find inside today's society, we find people over, if we can use such words, over obsessed and select themselves to be specific chosen individuals because certain titles become dominant inside our society. Titles like Al-Firqatul Najiyah, Al-Ta'ifatul Mansura, the saved sect, the victorious group, all based upon the hadith inside Sunan Imam Tirmidhi that the Jews split into 71 sects, all of them into the hellfire except for one. The Christians split into 72 sects, all of them into the hellfire except for one. And then this ummah was split into 73 sects, all of them in the fire except for one. And then the companions asked the question, Man hum ya Rasulullah, who are those individuals? And he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, ma ana alayhi wa ashabi. Other riwayat that we find al-jama'ah, the congregation. So ma ana alayhi wa ashabi, what I am upon today and my companions. Meaning this is the principle, the methodology of following the way of the saved sect and the victorious group is to follow the way of the companions. This is also evidence inside the Quran, inside Surah An-Nisa, the fourth surah, verse number 114. وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ, whoever contends with the messenger after evidence has been shown to that individual, وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and goes against the way of the believers. So this what concerns us, goes against the way of the believers. And here ulama make interpretation, the way of going against the way of the believers is going against the companions. So this shows that whoever contends with the messenger, goes away from the sunnah of the messenger, goes away from the understanding of the companions, then that person unfortunately begins to deviate away. Now here what we should be worried about is to apply this to the society and the people around us. This is what the problem is, that many of the average Muslims, they get over zealous and they begin to apply that if a person has deviated or a person has some discrepancy inside their belief or has a misunderstanding in their belief or doesn't reach the right benchmark as they perceive to be the right belief, then they begin to label them as deviant or corrupt individuals, and may Allah forbid, even condemning some people to the hellfire because of the belief that they may be holding at that moment in time. And this in itself is dangerous as well, of a layman taking these points and applying them in the wider society around us, because sometimes these are intricate matters. Even some scholars try to study and highlight who the different 72 sects are. There's other scholars who even question authenticity of hadith inside the Sunnah of Imam Tirmidhi, etc. that we find. So this is a deep science that shouldn't be open to every single individual, an average individual, to read these such a hadith and begin to apply them to the people around us. What concerns us is to find the principles of what these individuals or what this saved sect is, and to follow those principles to the best of ability inside their life. If you read the works of Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, even after speaking about Al-Firqatul Najiyah, Ta'ifatul Mansura, even though some ulama go to review these as synonymous terms and derivatives or the one and the same meaning. He concludes inside his works, for example, if you look at Aqidatul Wasatiyah, that I hope and I aspire to be amongst from this saved sect after speaking about all the different concepts of belief of the victorious group should have. So amongst their basic principles is holding fast to the correct belief without any corruption or deviation, and thus coming underneath the banner of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, people of the Sunnah, and those who are the Jama'ah, the congregation. They cluster, they gather around that, and they encourage people to come under the banner of this correct belief. They preach to that, they hold fast, and they protect the principles of the correct belief towards regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels, the books, the last day, the messengers, and the principles of Islam, the principles of Iman, etc. They hold fast to that. They give the right interpretation based upon the Quran and the Sunnah and the understanding of the companions and the three righteous generations that you find based on the hadith in Bukhari, خير الناس قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. Then we find also amongst their principles or the symbols, they hold that they have a love and a devotion and commitment to the Sunnah, adherence to the Sunnah, preaching to the Sunnah, defending and honoring in the Sunnah. Also, we find struggling in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some try to codify this. This means just holding fast via the pen and speaking out against deviation. But the other meaning is more stronger, is that physical impact of their belief in expanding in the parameters of Islam, defending the honor of Islam, becomes amongst their symbols as well. And they are zahirin al haq. They are always apparent on the truth, or victorious with the truth, or the truth is with them, or victory is granted to these individuals. So as we mentioned, it's a deep subject in itself. Who are the saved sect? That, like I mentioned, we should be what we should try to learn these principles, try to apply them in our life, and shouldn't be so bogged down in trying to label other individuals as deviant or corrupt individuals, or taking them out from the realms of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Rather, try our best to encourage people to come towards these principles and these points and to practice this inside their life. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst these individuals who are classified as al-firqatul naji'ah, al-ta'ifatul mansura, and to die upon the methodology and the path of أهل السنة والجماعة. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولجميع المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.